Is this change where we're getting now 3 older subs, not that one new one as well, is that a substantial change to the deal in your view?
Well, it is, obviously. I mean, the government's been saying for 3 years the optimal pathway involves buying 2 second-hand submarines and 1 new one. Now they're saying, no, we always really wanted to buy 3 second-hand ones. I mean, that just doesn't wash. Let's be clear about this. A Virginia-class submarine has a 33-year reactor life, so the boat can operate for 33 years. The second-hand boats will be able to operate for about half that time, so you're getting less. Now, the big problem, however, is not this. The big problem is that it's very likely we'll get nothing because the Americans are not producing enough submarines to meet their own needs and ours. They've always been very upfront about that. They haven't been able to lift production rates, and the very likely scenario is we get no Virginia-class submarines for the Australian Navy at all.
The government says it's actually what they always wanted, but obviously did not get in the negotiations, that in fact when they're in the middle of their life... Well, I'm just putting what they say.
I mean, it's ludicrous, right? I mean, I think David Shoebridge said the damage the AUKUS is doing to the Australian budget is second only to the damage that's now doing to the English language. I mean, optimal means the best. That's what it means. So pretending that anyway.
So you don't buy the substantive argument, which is that if they're in the middle of their life, they don't have the teething issues of a new thing, or obviously any apparatus like a sub at the end of its life also has a range of issues. You don't buy it?
Well, okay. Just getting to the details. If we're going to acquire 3 used in-service submarines, they will have about approximately half of their working life left. So you get less. They will have to be out of the Block 3 submarines, with Block 3 of the Virginia-class submarines, which will require more maintenance, more time in what they call the depot, being maintained and touched up and repaired and so forth, than the latest submarines. So these will have less working life and they'll require more maintenance. So there is no way this is as good a deal as the one that was previously announced. But as I said, the real issue is the United States Navy needs their shipyards, I should say, to be building on average 2 Virginia-class submarines a year. They've been stuck on 1.1 a year for a very long time and have not been able to budget despite a lot of additional investment. Now, they need to be at around 2.33 a year to be able to spare any submarines for the Australian Navy. And they've always been very upfront about this. We cannot complain that the Americans are, reneging or not delivering. They've always been very clear that there is an issue there about whether they'll be able to spare these submarines. And you have to say, based on what we know, based on what they disclosed to their parliament, which has much more information about AUKUS than our parliament gets, it's very unlikely we'll ever get any.
Ed Husick in Labor is sounding the alarm on changes to the AUKUS deal. He says it's a good time to reevaluate the government's position. He wants a vote on it. Now, of course, you don't tell what the Labor Party what to do, but do you think that's...
I didn't even do that when I was Prime Minister.
always smart to keep in your lane. But do you think that's what should happen now, that this is a big enough change to warrant a rethink of this?
Well, of course, yeah, absolutely. Look, our parliament has the most at risk, but is the least informed and has been the least curious. The US Congress receives information about the state of AUKUS, the AUKUS project, naval shipbuilding in voluminous detail all the time. And that's where we learn most of what's going on. The UK Parliament has just had an inquiry into AUKUS and has said the conclusion was that the project is in a lot of trouble and is at grave risk. Our Parliament has never had an inquiry into it. I mean, the Australian parliamentarians, every single one of them, is failing in their duty to the Australian people because they are not standing up to the government and asking hard questions about AUKUS. And the government is failing in its duty to the Australian people by not telling the truth. I mean, they simply do not acknowledge that there is a risk we will get no submarines. They're not acknowledging the huge problems in the British shipbuilding industry. I mean, Scott Morrison, who I've criticised about AUKUS, he was the guy that originally got this catastrophe underway. But Scott Morrison himself today has said that he has very big concerns about the British shipbuilding sector, which after all are supposed to be our partners in the long-term submarine project. I mean, this is a train wreck of a project, and the most likely outcome is that we end up with no submarines at all. So James Patterson's right. I mean,
we need a plan B.
Correct. I've been saying this for years. Now, Patterson he doesn't yet have the political courage to say this deal is a lemon. He's not quite prepared to say the emperor has no clothes. He's only preparing to say, that he's a little bit underdressed. But at some point, there's got to be an end to this denial of reality, which is that we're almost certainly going to end up with no submarines from the Americans, not because they're bad people or dishonest or anything, but simply because they don't have enough for their own and us. And they've always been upfront about that. And the British end of the deal, well, Britain's got 6 attack class submarines, SSNs, in the Royal Navy. Only one of them can go to sea. I mean, their shipbuilding industry is in a terrible state of affairs.
Well, the government is arguing that the second-hand subs will save them money as well, but they can't tell us how much.
No, they don't know. And look, as I said, it's got half the life of a new one, but we're not going to get any, right? And I mean, this is the point. The everything I hear from the Australian Navy senior people is that they have no confidence in the British part of the partnership, and they want to partner long term with the United States with Virginia's. That may make sense. That could be one scenario. But the difficulty is that the Americans are not building enough submarines for themselves and for us. So, the Parliament needs to lift the lid off this steaming mess and actually get the facts out there. And getting all of these, aggressive statements from ministers resenting anybody who asks questions. I mean, it's really they should be providing the answers, and the Parliament has got to stand up and do its job, and it's let us all down.
Well, Penny Wong is arguing it's not worthwhile to go chopping and changing now, that it will hurt our national security. Haven't we actually gone past the point of no return now?
Well, okay, so Penny Wong is saying we just get dragged along and end up with no submarines. So is her recommend? And I know Penny, as you do. I don't think this is what she really believes. We're really saying that we're just going to be passive actors, pretend that there's nothing at risk there, pretend there's no risk that we won't get any submarines. I mean, look, the Americans are being so upfront about the problems with production in their submarines. I mean, the Congressional Budget Office reported to the Congress in April that the rate of production of Virginias was still at 1.1 a year. It's got to be at 2 for America's own Navy and 2.33 to enable us to get any subs. Now, it's been at this level for years, and despite a lot of additional investment, they can't improve it or haven't been able to improve it. And so at some point, you've got to say, well, there is a real likelihood we'll end up with no subs. Now, interestingly, the American Congress acknowledges this risk. The Congressional Research Service publishes, masses of material, big reports on AUKUS. We don't see anything like that from the Australian government. And they are canvassing a scenario where Australia has no submarines at all. And we leave the submarining for the Americans. I mean, AUKUS is a great deal for the Americans, and it's a great deal for the Brits. It's a shocking deal for Australia.
Peter Garrett will head this inquiry that's been announced and been crowdfunded this week. Are you going to be part of that?
Well, I'm not part of it. I mean, I may make a submission or write, my views on this are very well known, but I can certainly
Do you think it's a
provide
good
them with
idea
it.
that
Yeah,
a
well,
grassroots review like this happen?
well, sure. I mean, I think yeah, of course. I think it's a democracy. I think it's always a good idea for people to be paying attention to these issues. That's why I've held now 2 years running a sovereignty and security forum in Canberra. I mean, at some point, we've got to be prepared to see the world as it is and be clear-eyed and objective about the challenges and the problems we face and what we can do to address them. So, look, I welcome the inquiry. I mean, obviously, its value will be judged by its output. So that's so it's too early to say whether it's going to do a good report
Yeah.
or be a good process, but it's certainly better than the big fat nothing that our parliament is still giving us.